I just want to start out by saying that I never wanted to make this video. But I think it's finally time to be honest with all of you and just a little bit more vulnerable. I am bisexual. Now, this isn't a big coming out video. I actually came out to family and friends more publicly last April, so I've been out for like a year and a half now. But I never talked about it here on this channel before, specifically because I didn't want to use my sexuality as a gimmick to sell paintings. Now, I know some of you that watched Studio Vlog 49, which came out a couple of weeks ago, called Acceptance. I was dancing around some subject. This is what it is. Some of you, I think, definitely kind of picked up on those vibes, but didn't want to say anything. One person did definitely say something, and after that, I was like, you know what? I just want to write this and get it out there. I think I'll just be I'll feel a lot better once I do this. For everyone who hadn't figured this out by now, I realize it's kind of a shock. Probably is, to at least to some degree. But I really wanted to use this opportunity to share some of my journey, as well as why I'm talking about this now. So I will spare you the long version of my entire life story. I've told actually different bits and pieces of it over the years, but obviously leaving out something rather big like this, because I wasn't really ready to deal with it for a really long time. But I do want to jump over some highlights. So I was a pretty shy and naive kid, if you could believe it, given how much of a presence online I am now. But I wasn't really out there to that degree. I was much more reserved. I was the quiet kid in many ways. I think a lot of, people in like the queer community will say something like, oh, I knew that I was a little different, and I definitely did. I would say probably like second grade or so onward. It's like I knew I wasn't quite the same as everybody else, but I didn't have the vocabulary or the emotional clarity to even come close to understanding what that was. If I had to source anything back to like one moment, and I don't really have one moment, I basically have a bunch of little moments over the course of my life, but the earliest thing I can really think of was when I was in about 5th grade.
5th grade, boys?
It was the age where you're leading up to, onset puberty, and depending on, where you live and what your schooling was like, at least for me, it was the awkward, awkward puberty movie, so to speak. But before we got to the movie, at least in school, everyone got like this little booklet that kind of explained a lot of that stuff. And again, pretty innocent childhood stuff here, but it was one of those things where it was like the cross-section of the male anatomy like really fascinated me. And that little booklet was like a kid with their first Hustler magazine. Like, I coveted that thing, and I couldn't explain why then, but there was something about that like really stuck with me. Now, like going throughout like middle school and high school kind of deal, it's like I knew I kind of liked looking at guys, but again, this was a very different time. This was the era of gay as a word being used as more of an insult, like that's gay. It was part of the cultural lexicon of the time, and I of course joined into that too, because that was just how things were. So it was immediately deemed as like an other and a bad thing, and obviously created a lot of internal homophobia for myself. But again, didn't fully grasp all of that and couldn't fully reflect on it at the time. But it was definitely one of those things where it's like, well, I know I'm not that though, because I do like girls. But I like these things, but I'm not that. I'm definitely not that. And as long as I wasn't that, I was okay. Now, high school was also a time for me of sort of my faith awakening in many ways. I come from a Catholic family, and I was searching for an identity, and I found that in the church, and I really leaned pretty hard into that. It's actually interesting, if you look back through my childhood photos, I would always smile like this. And then when I sort of found God, so to speak, I would smile like this, showing teeth, being genuinely happy, because at that point I genuinely was. And I love those times. Those were great times. Really diving into the church stuff, and I became the quintessential church kid. Any youth group event, mission trip, Bible study, you name it, I was there. And that's sort of who I became. And in being that person of who I became, leading through high school, I took an interest in Catholic seminary. I feel like that's almost a stereotype that like the closeted queer kid like joins the seminary, but I certainly did. Now, I'll spare you the longer details of my seminary years. That's a whole other story for a whole other day. But I went in and out a couple of times, and by the time I left and realized that life definitely wasn't for me, I was at a point, I was about 22, 23, and at that point I was in really a crisis mode in many ways, because I became that church kid, because from the time I was like 12 or 13 onward, really thought that, religious life, priesthood was going to be my life. I suddenly was at a point where I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life at this point. I don't know who I'm supposed to be, because who I thought I was going to be is now gone. It's dissolved. It's over. I don't know who I am now. And so in those years, I started up more of the art side of this YouTube channel back before I was making like short films and posting them, and I kind of focused on my art more and finished an associate's degree and was working a night job, just trying to just figure out like who I am in life. And it wasn't until I was about around 26 that I started actually thinking about myself in terms of sexuality. I had heard the term bisexual before, gay, lesbian, whatever, like I know the terms, but it was the first time that I kind of looked at myself and was like, based on all the stuff that I like, I think I might be bi. But the problem is being the church kid and even being the good boy, so to speak, even that thought is sort of a crisis, because like I have to think about what that means for me and the people in my life as well. Now, around the same time, I became friends with this guy I met online, and we found that we had a lot in common. We lived on opposite ends of the country, but it's like we both came from a Catholic family, both really interested in art and all that stuff. And we, at some point, got comfortable enough with each other sort of to come out to each other. He had actually been out for a lot longer than I had, but it was one of those things where it's like he really kind of helped me process a lot of that stuff. Now, with this guy, eventually we did end up meeting up and hanging out and hooking up. And while it was great at the time, and that, to me, like if fifth grade was the start of my awakening journey, that was like the end cap, because I was like, whoa, I love this. I'm definitely bi, for sure. And every moment after that time, I was like, now I really know. Before, like, maybe. Now I'm like, yes, now I know. Now, I'm not friends with that guy anymore, not for the sake of an ill-advised hookup, for much other reasons, very different reasons, but it really set me on this current path of like leading up in the couple of years until coming out last year. But everything up until then was me trying to convince myself that something was broken and something was not okay with me. Like after that point, I started to figure myself out and realize that I'm okay with this. And in being okay with this, I'm allowed to be okay with this. For so long, I had just buried all of these thoughts and all of these emotions so far down that it was like I couldn't even admit it to myself. And there's a phrase that's like the hardest person to come out to is yourself, and it's totally true. I hid within so many different little compartments for so long, and it was in retrospect it was miserable, because I was so afraid of being this thing. It's and it just builds up inside of you until you like rip off the Band-Aid and go, I'm free. I am so jealous of people that figure this stuff out in their teens. Like, it took me over 30 years to figure out that I like girls, and I also really like guys.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
But everything since last year has kind of put me on a different emotional roller coaster now, because I'm having to deconstruct my past and kind of rebuild it from the ground up. Just trying to figure out which world I kind of belong in. From such a young age, when I decided, oh, I'm going to be a priest someday, I didn't even let myself feel any emotional or intimate connection with anybody, and it kind of broke my brain in a way that I'm probably still going to be trying to fix for several years to come. It's one of those things where it's just like trying to rewire so much in my head, and in doing so, it's a lot. And part of the reason why it's a lot is there's a lot of people that come out and just like totally abandon their faith. I'm not as a devout Catholic as I used to be, but it's still really important to me. And being able to try to hold on to that while still walking forward is tricky. Now, I also want to say that I don't want to minimize people that have experienced a lot more religious trauma and deep emotional abuse. I haven't. I can't speak to that. Most of my internal broken brain stuff and wounds were very self-inflicted. So I know there is that little dichotomy there in that difference, but it is no less harmful to force yourself into a box that you don't belong in. And being able to break yourself out of that box, or closet as they say, it is so freeing. And like I said before, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off. You're no longer telling half-truths. You're no longer lying to people. It's a very freeing experience. Now, if you guys have been following me for a while, and I know a lot of you, if you're returning viewers, you have, I'm sure you know that I am not the stereotypical queer guy. I hate musicals. I pretty much despise most pop music. I'm not outwardly flamboyant. I didn't hang out with a bunch of girls in high school. I didn't take theater. I'm what many people would refer to as straight presenting or straight passing. You know, it's like I love rock music and action movies with boobs, and most of my cooking involves lots of meat. I grew up hunting and fishing and love those things too.
You know what else I love? Dick.
Like, if you met me on the street, like, you wouldn't even remotely guess that I'm not straight. Probably. I also disagree with a lot of the stereotypical LGBTQ political rhetoric. There's a lot from within this community that I think is really toxic, and I won't get specific on that, but not everybody fits into the like social media bubble of what people think the queer community is like. It's a lot more diverse and nuanced than most people think. Not everyone like me is what fits into the TikTok box, or what you see on, you know, cable news networks or late night show monologues. It's a lot more complicated and nuanced than that. And additionally, again, like, I'm still Catholic. I love my faith, which is not something a lot of people in this community would say proudly and openly. But in that sense, I also don't believe that I am inherently sinful or disordered. I very much disagree with that. But like the core tenets of Christianity, I still believe that stuff. All right, so this is an art channel. Why am I making this video at all, right? Like, what's the takeaway? What's the point of this? I'm not gonna try to start being a bi social media influencer or whatever. I don't want to. That's not me in any capacity. I don't want to have anything to do with that. But I did want to share a bit of my personal story, because I know, at least for some people, it will be relatable, and it's important to share these kind of stories, regardless of if you agree with them or not. As I mentioned earlier, like, vlog 49, I was dancing around this a lot, and like, I don't want to. I've always said I've never wanted my sexuality and my art to intersect, because those for me have always been two very different things. But in my current emotional journey, the two are very quickly becoming one thing. All of what I'm working on as in time of recording, I've got 3 big projects I'm working on, and every single one of them directly relates to the struggles I'm having right now. The biggest of these, again, is sort of reconciling my upbringing and faith, as well as my being open and accepting of my own sexuality, because those two things traditionally kind of butt heads. It's not impossible to live as a queer Christian. There are lots of us out there. We are often silenced by one side or the other for betraying, again, one side or the other for different things. But it's one of those things where it's like, I'm really at this crossroads in my life right now, where it's like coming from one life that, while I do still love all of that stuff, it's not me anymore. And I don't want to hide in that world. But I also don't want to abandon it because it still means a lot to me. But in coming out, it's also like I'm not just going to jump on board and just start sleeping with everybody, because that's also not me. So finding a way to walk this middle ground, and I'm like, what world do I belong in? What world do I belong in? And I'm starting to reach this point where, like, maybe it's not one or the other. Because everything in my life has always been in between two things. Between faith service and art passions. Between shyness and confidence. Between men and women. You know, it is, I've always found myself walking this middle ground. So it's not a matter so much of which of the two worlds I belong in.
Maybe it's both.
But more of finding a happy middle ground. And how this relates back to my art is changing the way I paint. I worked with, opaque layers for a long time, and now I'm leaning towards transparent layers more raw brush strokes, looser lines, things that allow me to be a lot more expressive rather than that rigid box that I used to hide myself into. As I navigate through my own emotional turbulence, that is very much becoming reflected in my art. And going forward on this channel, I want to be able to talk openly about these things in order to also talk about the art, because at this point in time, they're not two separate things. I'm walking the middle line between them, and they are intersecting every other foot. I also wanted to talk about this because I'm sure there are other Christians out there that are in a sort of crisis moment in turbulence in their life, trying to accept their sexuality. Again, it is possible. I've actually dropped a couple of links in the description box below, one of which is a podcast that I've been listening to, weird to say, religiously as of late, called the I Tried to Be Straight podcast. It is primarily interviews with people from the evangelical Christian world and how they came to terms with their sexuality and either leaving the church or finding a space within it. The other one is a guy I found recently this year, actually was also recommended to me, a guy by the name of Justin. He started a platform called Empty Chairs. I'm in their Discord community and I'm meeting some really awesome people there. And it is specifically queer Catholics reconciling their faith with their sexuality and all the baggage that comes with that, but also being able to help each other out. So I wanted to link those two things as well, because I think they're extremely valuable, especially because I know I'm not alone in this at all. The other reason I want to make this video now, again, I'd mentioned in the vlog that I'm not a political artist, but we are reaching a point, at least in the United States where I live, where there is a lot of growing anti-LGBTQ sentiment, where it is becoming more and more hostile. Laws are getting passed, laws are getting proposed that are directly harmful to myself and this community, and I can't ignore that forever. Again, I don't want to make this anything political, but this is a real problem. Human rights are being violated, and it's not okay. Some of the stuff being said by government officials in this country right now is making me genuinely sick to my stomach. And I felt so comfortable coming out last year, finally, because I felt the world was finally in a place where I am comfortable and I feel acceptable. And in a year, a little over a year, things have gone backwards like 20 years. And it's just mind-boggling. But I do want to be open about it, because right now it's really important, now more than any other time in history. It's important to me to talk about this because The political divide in this country is polarizing, and it's not even people listening to each other. It's just who can shout it over each other the loudest. That's not progress in any capacity. I think a lot of people, I find that most people are okay if you're gay or bi or straight or queer or whatever. Like nobody actually really cares that much until they get on social media and start typing. The people that do have the loudest and sort of angriest voices, I've found, are the ones who have never really had a conversation with somebody from the queer community. In that sense, I'm sure there will be people in my comments saying things. I will be as polite as I can. I don't want to have to turn off comments if things get too heated. But if you have never had a conversation with somebody who has experienced life like this, my email is open and available on the channel. And there's also the Cinderblock Society Discord community, which is free to join. If you want to talk to me there about this stuff, you're welcome to do so as well. Just be polite, be respectful, and know that not everyone always experiences life in the same way. Also, if you feel like you're in a rough place in whatever community, family that you're in, know that there are people out there like you. There are people out there that can support you. There are fantastic organizations out there like the Trevor Project which can help guide you, especially in rough family situations with a lot of awful homophobia, especially for young people. So yeah, I've been making art videos on this channel for a long time. I'm still going to. This is not going to become a hub for sexual content in any capacity, or sexuality content, or political content, anything like that. I'm going to be back to making art videos next week. I'm actually working on a huge double review of 2 different types of paint. But I wanted to get it out there that, hi, I'm Ben, I'm bisexual. It feels good to just say it out loud and on camera for the first time and get that out. Not that I want to make my brand about that, but I don't want to hide it. If you have found this video outside of my art stuff, hi, I'm Ben. I make videos here about painting and learning to paint and advice for artists and ways to stay inspired, and also share some of my own artwork here as well. If that's at all interesting to you, I invite you to subscribe and become part of the Cinderblock Studios family and the community here of other artists and creatives. If you just want to follow an artist because they're bi or queer or straight or gay or whatever, don't follow me for that. Follow me because you like my work and you like the videos that I make other than this one. But I encourage you to explore the channel regardless. A final note, I've, again, including the resources I already talked about, I linked quite a few of them in the description box below. Just if you're all more curious about this kind of stuff and questioning your sexuality in any capacity, I've dropped you some resources below for that. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this one. So this has been reminding you to keep on creating, stay inspired, and I will see you guys next time. And remember, if people don't accept you for who you are, fuck them. Not literally, of course, though.